here with a little bit delayed because of the rain and the Uber.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's a different story. So glad that those of you who are here could make it. We're really honored to have Hari Srinivasan from LinkedIn here. Uh, Hari has done a great deal of work in computer engineering science and has now been working at LinkedIn for some time as the head of product for LinkedIn Learning. And since we are here in San Francisco as Columbia University hosting events around professional development, what could be better than to have someone such as Hari with firsthand experience and many years of it in designing electronic user interfaces that are ideal for representing yourself as a professional. And that's what LinkedIn is all about. We all love it and use it frequently, and it's a fantastic tool. So without any delay, I'll have you, Ari, come and speak to us about what you're doing there and the products.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me again. So we have just one goal today, which is I want to exit here with people knowing how they can make an awesome LinkedIn profile. And so first of all, let me just make sure I have a kind of a look at the room. Does everyone have a LinkedIn profile here? Great. Okay. So that's kind of the first step. I'm going to give you a little history of why. I know you all have one, so you hopefully get some of the uptake on it. Give you a little history of why, and then I just have 5 tactical steps we can walk through and how you make it better. And of course, through each of these, I'm happy to talk about some of the decisions we made on the product or anything else I could be able to help with LinkedIn as well. So for those of you who don't know, and it sounds like most of you do, we have a vision of LinkedIn, which is to make sure we can represent every single member of the global workforce opportunity. And when you start with a vision like that, it is hard to make sure we have an easy way to tell everyone's different story. And so I know sometimes when you're creating the profile, it could be a little bit difficult. It could be a little bit challenging when you go through it and say, should I be doing this and should I be doing that? I just want to take 1 second to explain why we should have one for anyone who might be online who doesn't have one. We have now, I think, much more than this, but over 500 million members who have one, which means that often this is where you go in order to join that conversation. And over 2 new people are creating a profile every second now. And so it's definitely a vast and growing network, and it's, when we first started doing this, even when I doing it a few years ago, it felt like, hey, half the people I meet in a room wouldn't have one. I feel like, hey, we're starting to turn that tide 2 members at a second at a time. The reality, though, is, when you look at the profile, a lot of what we're doing is actually changing. There's a series of different trends. Sorry, guys, looking like a little bit of AV issues here. Give me 1 sec to see if I can fix this. That looks promising. There we go. I'm not going to touch it again. There's a series of different things that are actually happening in the workforce, though, that may make it actually more difficult to tell your story than ever. You probably read about this, but because of automation and AI, people are changing jobs a lot faster. There's new kinds of certifications that come up every day, both from different universities saying these are different ways we can actually educate people, as well as just different skills and how people are actually identified for them. More and more people I talk to at least are doing more than one thing at once. They may have a career they're going for, but they're doing something right now that actually works. We're seeing more and more youth unemployment, especially in particular countries where they're starting to say, how do I get the skills in order to get to the path I want, even though knowing that some of the market may not be there today. There's an idea of lifelong learning, where more and more people are going back to school at different times in their career. LinkedIn actually has a learning product as well, where we try to basically teach these particular skills. And there's just an increased idea of industry volatility. I mean, I think not too long ago, you would be able to take a particular job in a particular industry, and your story was, I've been at this company for 30 years, or I've been in this particular industry for 30 years. I think that's changing. And more and more when we do these kind of stories, I get more and more questions about how do I tell a story with all these different changes happening. And so one of the things I want to walk through today is not just, maybe you've seen something on how to make a LinkedIn profile. How do you make a LinkedIn profile in today's day and age when some of these changes are happening? I'm sorry to hear about the slides, guys. I hope we can get this to work. So a lot of what we've been doing on the product side is starting to think about, hey, if there's all these different trends in the world, how do we start making an identity that helps people represent these different trends? How do we start showing these different kind of credentials that people are getting? A lot more people, if they're doing gig work, how do we show those work products? And how do we do social representation, things like reviews and ratings that people are collecting in different areas? And again, today I just want to walk through a few steps in order to see how that new profile is starting to look today. All right, so tip number one, now we'll get into the tactics of it. First of all, how many people here with a profile actually have a picture on it? Yeah, most of you. Great, that's fantastic. So one of the interesting things I always tell people, because it doesn't make sense, right? You see this thing, you're like, okay, I'll go when I'm put in my position, I'll put in a position, is remember the people who are looking at this are human, and they resonate with other humans. So I always suggest that people go in and add a professional profile. Now the number one question I get is, well, then I got to go get a professional headshot. I got to go, I got to Sears or wherever and get the shot. You don't have to do that. We've done a lot of work on this. Basically, when people come in with a casual headshot, it typically works just as well in order to get these kind of results. And so one thing I always tell people is make sure you actually have a headshot in there today. We've added a couple features in order to make it a little bit easier for you to do this. We've added filters that actually help you come in and make sure that if it's not, you can crop it. I get it that like on Facebook and other sites, it's easy to put a picture with you and your family or you and your dog. On our site, it's typically a single person headshot. So we made some easier features for you to crop and make sure it looks good. I always get questions, should you be looking at the camera and to the left and the right? It doesn't actually make that much of a difference. There are some studies I've read that like people are more likable when they're looking into the camera than out. I'll let you make your own judgments on that. But a lot of the things I've seen are, Jeff's actually an engineer on our team. It doesn't have a tie, he doesn't have a suit, he just looks like a really relatable human being. And so make sure you just get that picture right. Detail your work experience. So the number one, that's kind of the first thing I always see people mess up is they don't actually go put in a photo. The second thing I think is they just go in and add one title. It is really confusing with all those trends happening what people are actually doing. When you say you work in BD or you say you work in sales, that could be many, many different things. The other thing is remember people are kind of searching, right? And they search through text. And so if you come in and you're looking for in-house design team, well, multimedia designer doesn't actually have that. And so the ability to add some of this text and actually have it show up is actually really, really important in order to get opportunity. We'll get to this in a minute, but pictures actually help too. We have the ability to add pictures and comments, and I feel like even the people who go in and add text often don't realize that. And I would go ahead, we'll get to this in a second, and add some of that multimedia. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious, I noticed that it says Mr. Ahmed was part of it.
Yeah.
So the tense,
Great question.
the language that's being used, active, I, full sentences, what's
Fantastic question. I would, so what I've seen on this is there's no change in kind of the opportunities people get whether they talk about first degree or third degree, but I've heard a lot more impassioned annoyance around third degree, where people talk to themselves as Mr. Ahmed or Mr. Srinivasan or something else. So I would strongly suggest just tactically use the first person, just say I do X, Y, Z. And I think there's a group of people, for whatever reason, are annoyed in the other way, so no reason to keep them annoyed when you're looking for something. So I would use the word I. Yeah, that's a great question. Another thing that I would actually strongly suggest here that people I've seen do really effectively is it is weird to talk about yourself when you're writing about your experience because most things people do are in teams. And don't like you can say like alongside my team or you can say we did this, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And so, the real thing you want to get here is kind of 3 to 5 sentences. I think, you don't want to book them up, like 3 to 5 sentences that really just say, this is what I've done. So when someone's looking at you, they're like, oh, this is the experience of wisdom someone actually brings to the table. Hope that helps. Yeah. And I would say full sentences for the most part. I've seen some quick bullet stuff, and I think that can be effective depending on the role. But the majority of people I see kind of writing things like this.
So full sentences, I versus just saying created X, Y, Z.
I mean, right to the language you feel comfortable in. I don't like, but I just wouldn't. If it was me, I wouldn't say Mr. Srinivasan did X, Y, Z. Great questions. The only other thing I'll add here before I go on is some people I see this just for their current position. I actually think it makes sense to even add a couple lines to your previous positions for the same reason. You never know. The stories I've talked to probably thousands of customers now members who have made a profile. You just never know the strangeness by which your story might resonate with that red opportunity. Like someone who had a lemonade stand who went on to do sales, and turns out there was a soda company who was in the mix. Like those two things would have never fit together in their mind, but it fit together once the dots connected. So just think through that as you're doing this. Sorry.
Well, that actually is something I was going to ask about, which is because maybe 5, 6 years ago, a professional career counselor, coach, whatever, had been saying, no, the vibe is you delete all you just need the titles and the dates. You don't need all the detail. So then I deleted all the detail of the older jobs, and I mean, most of us are going to be mid-career people,
yeah, totally.
later career people. how far back
So-
are we supposed to go in
Great
terms of
question. So-
detail? Like, can you,
Yeah,
for the
great
things that were the
question.
first jobs, the second jobs, just keep it to 2 to 3
You certainly
lines?
can. You
And
certainly
then
can.
be more detailed for the more recent stuff, or do you really need the detail for everything?
So I think 2 to 3 lines is probably the right for the previous stuff, just to say this is what I did. I can explain why I think that. I don't know all the professional coaches out there,
Right.
but we did a product. So what we found is that most people, when they look at your story, you think they're kind of reading through line by line. What they're doing is glancing at it, right? And they're trying to get a pattern of what you've actually done. And so one of the design changes we made maybe a year or two ago is we only show the first 5, and then we hit a kind of an expand all. Right, so if you go to the mobile site, you'll see kind of more things are going mobile. You'll see 5, and you'll hit expand all. And if you expand it, we expand it fully. And so my guess is maybe at some point when they saw everything, they thought it, like, maybe a career coach thought it would be more difficult to kind of grok your story if they saw very long text. I think that was a product design challenge. I think we fixed that. So now I think what we've basically been telling people is, hey, man, what do you think is right type story? Go ahead.
Well, one question. So we replicate the same content from the CV in LinkedIn, or so we rephrase it so it doesn't look the same?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way I look at it is your resume is a one-to-one communication tool. Most times you're going to talk with a resume, you're going to go into a job or a position, you're going to hand them that resume and you're going to say, this is why I'm perfect for this job. This is a one-to-many communication tool. What's going to happen is you don't really know, this is a public profile, you don't know who's going to see it. If you set the preferences to be public, you don't know who's going to see it and who your network's going to see it. And so what you're basically trying to do is tell people in a more generic way what you're actually doing. So tactically what I think that means is, when you write a resume, you're probably going to write bullets that ladder up into that job position. You're going to look at the job description and write bullets against it. When you write this, you're just going to be telling your story to a more, kind of if you met someone in public and you were telling your story. In fact, like maybe fun for me, design stories, when we first designed this is what we did. We went and we looked at people in professional networking settings. We looked at people who were like this, shaking hands and saying hi. And we looked at how do they actually communicate. And what they typically do is, the top profile piece, it's their face, because that's what people typically start looking at. And then it says their name and their position, and that's usually the badge that they wear at these events. And then when they start talking, they'll say, like, I've been, in this case, at LinkedIn for a couple of years, and then previously I was there. And we tried to basically emulate that story in the product, because I think that was a natural way people communicate. And so I would just say, like, when you're out there naturally communicating and think about how you meet people, try to get that out here. Great. Let's go to question item number 3. So I was saying add examples of your work in photos and in presentations. This is like, I think it's harder than people think, and it's also easier than people think. And so let me explain what I mean by that. Like, I think a few years ago, the idea if you were a designer and you'd have a portfolio and you'd add it there made sense to people. I think we're moving to a world now where pretty much everyone has some artifact of what they've done. Maybe they have an article they've written, or there was a press release that was somewhat related to them, or there was a topic that they worked on. There was a speech you did in a particular event. I would add that in there. I think when you're looking at people, remember what we've done now is we've basically kind of taken just the top 5 and said this is a quick glance at what someone's done. When you see there's a press release of a product someone worked on, they probably don't remember that product even from 4 years ago, but they might remember that image. It probably, like, when you see people back there and they're actually doing a talk, you get a different kind of emotional resonance with them. And remember, the people who are going to click on this are the people who are kind of 2 steps deep and kind of wanted to know you. So I would go ahead and do that. Yeah, go ahead.
So how is this being presented? Like, is that a link to something
Correct.
that's on the web?
Yes. So it's all in your control. If you go, basically, if you hit, there's a little add button next to it, it'll just say add your link, and you can add an image, you can add a link, etc., and it'll live on.
But it's tied specifically to that particular entry, i.e.
Correct.
It's tied to filmmaker/multimedia designer, as seen in this particular webpage.
That's correct.
Entry
If you go into the summary section, you can also add, so if you want to tell, hey, there's maybe a personal website.
A whole body of work or something.
And so you could put that in the summary section as part of the general story, or you could do it here as part of the position.
Okay. And what do you find? Do people link to things on the web where things can change at a moment's notice, and then you have to stay on top of it and curate to make sure
you can do a couple
people
things.
haven't changed their links on
Yeah,
the other side? Or
great
just
question.
that more people are doing it as their own website or a locally stored repository?
You could, I mean, so if it's like a press release, you could save it as a document if you're worried about that and kind of put it up there. I feel the majority of things I've seen that people linking out to other websites because they're typically articles or press email, those kind of things. And for the most part, once it's on out there, it doesn't change that much. It may get deleted, but like, yeah. I don't know why. I mean, so maybe if you feel uncomfortable with it, I'm not sure what that work product is. You can probably download it and make it a PDF. Yeah, it's a great question.
No, actually, because my experience is that URLs change because companies change their website design and their web URLs.
Let's
So
say
that
usually
things
maybe they sometimes
actually,
redirect and
yeah,
to
things
keep
can
the
actually
traffic.
change, and then you have to make sure that it's still there and active.
Yeah, I mean, so there's probably some, yeah, I mean, yeah. I feel like what we've seen is most companies who, like on press articles, who will make a change, typically redirect traffic to keep your SEO links. So most part it usually works, but I mean, there's tons of exceptions to every rule.
Yes.
So like, yeah, think through the PDF thing and you know, maybe that's a better scenario for this.
But the PDF, is that stored locally on LinkedIn, or is that a PDF
Yeah,
that's
that's
stored
stored
on your?
locally on LinkedIn, yeah. Or not locally, sorry, it's stored on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, I meant within the LinkedIn universe versus a PDF that lives on your own cloud storage.
Correct, that would be stored.
That's what I was trying to clarify. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we
Yep.
move on,
Sorry.
from the profile topic, from the in the experience of each one of these organizations that someone might have worked with,
Yeah.
I've seen people putting in the career progression they've had, like staff engineer, senior staff
Yeah.
engineer, and so on,
Yeah.
in one organization, and I've also seen the latest
Totally.
experience or
Yeah.
title being put in there. So what do you?
So we made a design change about 3 months ago where we auto group your previous experiences. So basically what it will say is if this person, you know, was a staff engineer and then a senior engineer and then an engineer, we'll auto group it so there's just one logo and then small bullets. And so I would suggest adding a wall now because it actually shows a nice progression story. And that was the design. I think we struggled with people telling us that a lot, and so we kind of rewired the whole system a few months ago. And it's been really well received.
Yeah, that change really helped for those of us who've had multiple roles
Great.
in a company.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's nice that
Excellent.
it's linked up.
Yeah, that was it was a good change for us. It took a few months to get out, but yeah, great.
Does that, now that it exists, and 2 thumbs up for that, is it based on, do you actually have to add the dates of the different period, or can you just list the different titles?
I
to show that
think you
had
can
a
just
progression.
list the different titles, but don't. I actually I don't remember. I think you can just list the different titles,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't. We lost her a few months ago, and I don't remember that case. Just sorry. Yeah.
No, fair enough.
Yeah.
Big
Um,
improvement.
Yeah, great. I'm glad. That was it was a good one. I thought too. So, good.
Another question, so if one uploads video or photos, for example, they're being stored on LinkedIn's site, so are there any, well, we are still the copyright holders as the
Yeah.
creator.
Yeah.
It's none of the stuff that we have to deal with some of the other terms of service of other social sites that suddenly say, oh, we're now the copyright holder once you upload something.
I don't believe there's any copyright
There's no
changes. I mean, you can double check it to make sure, like before I speak to our terms and services, you know, but I don't think so. Just know though, it is up, you know, if your profile is made, like if the settings are public, then other people can see it, so.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Cool. All right, let's go to number 4. This one is something people don't think of when they typically think of identity, but it's more and more becoming common on LinkedIn that people actually share. They share to the feed. And let me just walk through why our feed is slightly different, right? When you share an article to the feed, if you write a long form article, those get shared to your network, and it also becomes part of your profile. And so I've seen people start using this in really clever ways. If you're, you know, if you're a large CEO and you're trying to get messages out to your team, it's certainly an incredible way to do this. If you're trying to position yourself as an expert in something, it is a great way to say anyone who sees you now knows what's top of your mind. And of course, if you're trying to build that network out, it's a great way to kind of start communicating. And so has anyone actually written an article here? Okay, yeah, there you go. Pretty decent experience? Yeah, good.
It was actually based on the last time I heard you speak. I've been doing most of my posting on Medium.
Okay.
And then I would just drop the link into
Great.
my LinkedIn profile so we get up. But all of the tracking was on Medium.
Okay.
And once I started writing in LinkedIn, the analytics were much better.
Great.
And the tracking of who all looked at it was much better.
Great.
And so I've I've not figured out how to do the opposite and use Medium to drive people to my LinkedIn page, but I've
You
got a
have
couple-
or you have? You
I've
have.
not.
Good.
No,
Okay.
no,
That's good for
I-
us.
I-
Yeah.
so-
All right. That's good to hear. And how was your experience?
It was excellent.
Excellent.
Yeah, publishing, it was, honestly, it took a little bit of familiarizing with just the tools and which kind of pathway, by which pathway do I go, and I didn't operate with full confidence the first time I did it, and I
Yep.
did a lot of double checking to say, is this really going to the proper, am I doing it the right
Yeah.
way, am I sharing it with too many, I just wanted to make sure that it was, and I didn't really know in advance, what would happen with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of
Trepidation.
yeah,
Totally get that.
uncertainty, and that was kind of. But I just took the plunge and took the jump, and I thought the analytics that came back were satisfying, and I said,
Great.
wow, it seemed to be, it was quite good in doing what
That's
I was hoping
great.
that it would.
That's great. That's good to hear. And I would, for those of you who haven't, I'd try it out. Like, there's no downside. I mean, you can always delete it after, and hopefully it's a good way to get the story out. Yeah.
Question from the product perspective.
Yeah.
Unless I'm missing something, I don't see any way to save or bookmark any of the articles that people post. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, there's a
Because in the actual item, there's no drop down, there's no way to say, oh, I want to refer to this later.
I think there is I'm 99% sure there's a save feature, and it shows up on the profile once you save.
Yeah,
so
there
it'll show
is.
up on your profile.
I've got 3 articles I've saved by other people.
And you can save jobs as well as learning courses.
But how do you do that?
There's a little link next to each article on the feed, and there's a.
And I can tell you that it is actually not
That's
there.
probably true. It's probably not on the web. The majority of people get the.
Feedback, it needs to be there.
Well, yeah, I think the majority of people who are heavy users typically end up using the apps. And one of the things we really struggle with the product is you have many surfaces, and where should you limit your resources, where do you invest? And typically what we see are users. I would actually encourage you to get the app, because I feel like if you're a heavy user and you're coming back, I think there's a lot of great features you'll discover in the app that aren't on mobile web. Well, it's your choice. If it's not for you, it's for you. I mean, that's one of the tough things about, to be honest, about my job products, is you have to make decisions on where should you invest your resources and your team's time. And so we spend a lot of time having those discussions.
Well, I understand that, but I have to admit that I don't even think I've seen that in the desktop browser interface either. I could be mistaken, but
Let me,
There.
afterwards, if you want to look
Yeah.
at my machine, I want to make sure we let Hari get to
Yeah.
all of his content.
no, I'm sorry, I didn't
so-
mean to
That's okay.
but I mean, just it's a feature that I've looked for and it's not there.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good feedback. We'll make sure we get it to the right place. Great. So I only have one more I want to talk through, which is kind of the newest things we've been working through, which is our skills validation. And so I know a few people have used endorsements in the past, and every time I talk, there's always a question about, hey, what is going on with these skills and what is going on with these endorsements. We've been doing a lot of changes to it, so I kind of want to walk folks through it. So first of all, endorsements is this idea that, hey, if someone else really values you, you can come in and endorse that person, and they can get reputation from it. I'll be the first to admit that kind of went awry. What ended up happening, we had a lot more endorsements than we thought, and there was a lot more signal to the noise. So we made a few changes that I just thought I'd walk through. The first is right here. What we started doing is, across all, like, I get it. Someone's aunt endorsed them, and they didn't know anything about Java, and it was like pretty fun, seeing these things. What we started doing is just basically highlighting the endorsements where people really knew their stuff and they talked to people. So we call them notable endorsements, but we're able to start separating some of the signal from the noise. And it's pretty cool because we do it on a relative basis. So JD and I connections, if you were to look at my profile, it may say that he endorsed me because you know him, and therefore there's trust in me. So there's a lot of work we've been doing there. There's a couple other things that we're kind of showing we're trying now, which is getting people to basically give us who they go to for these things and get better and better signal. It's a new area. It's a new area that we'd like to go to. There's one thing that I'm pretty excited about, which is we're starting to also suggest skills to people which are trending in the world, right? So one of the things we always hear is we have this great data, we have skills gap data, we know how we can help people get opportunity. How do we start educating people about these skills? And so now when you have the app, you'll start getting notifications. And those notifications will say that these are trails trending in your particular area, so you can make sure you get them. And so the one thing I will say about skills is it sounds crazy, but they are extremely useful in terms of getting opportunity for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of our relevant systems use these skills. And so it'll help us understand what you actually need, do the right job and the right content. The other thing is, people do search for skills. And so having these skills in your profile is pretty useful. So it would take some time to refresh them. and go from there. Did you have a question? Sorry, I thought I saw your hand. Sorry. Yeah.
How long have you, I noticed on the bottom 4 people, who might you endorse for something in particular? And 4 is a somewhat limited number. You know, do you know, like,
Test board.
if you have 25 people who know
Yeah,
about genomics
great,
or something?
great question. So we started this thing, which is select a different connection, and then you can pick whichever connection you feel is the right person.
Mm-hmm.
We also started the none of them item. I'd say these are still in the test phase. We're
Uh-huh.
still trying to figure out what the right way to go ahead is. But we are seeing some interesting signals on, getting people to say that this is my actual go-to person, which often is different than I endorse somebody else. It's a much higher bar, and that's kind of what
First time I saw that feature a few weeks ago, I thought it was like when you have to identify your credit.
Oh.
Which of these addresses have you never lived at?
Interesting. That's good feedback.
Who would I go to for,
Yes, exactly right. That's good feedback as well too.
But it was neat to see it as a feature. I've been hesitant to like over endorse.
Good.
Because I will accept almost anyone as a contact, so I have a pretty large LinkedIn.
Good.
I'm more limited in other social media, but here I'm like, if somebody requests it, I'll accept them. But then I want my endorsements to mean something, and I really want my recommendations to mean something. So I'm stingier with those.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I answered, because I was like, how this will get reported, and what if Michael is great at object-oriented programming, and I just didn't know.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. I think, we've been trying this idea of kind of social validation for a bit. I think there's a magical, if we get it right, I think it's going to be magical, and I think we're still figuring our way out. The interesting thing goes, we've done tens of millions of these now, and like across the system, I'm sure there's some signal there. And so we're starting to kind of get better at discipline. Yeah.
You raise an interesting point about the strategy of accepting everyone who asks for an endorsement, or not endorsement, to link in, versus choosing people that you actually have known and met. What is your recommendation?
Well,
is there?
Yeah, so Reid Hoffman, who's our founder, always says that LinkedIn was started to keep track of people you met offline. Like it was your way to kind of manage your network, not build your network. I think that's somewhat true. I think that's also changing over time. Like I've met a lot of people who are successful at building their network through the system as well. So it's really, I would say it's up to you. It's your network. I've seen all kind. It's like I've seen some people tell me I'm super selective on my LinkedIn, but I'm super open on Twitter or Facebook. Like I think everyone's got a strategy across these networks on how they use it. I usually just when I meet people who I get to know well, add them to my network. That's for whatever reason historically been my strategy. But everyone is very different. And I think, in addition, I think everyone's roles are a little bit different. Like, if you're out there a little bit more, I can see why you want a wider network. And so, I get why different means work for different people.
So, Howard?
Yeah?
I don't know if this is going to be coming up by design and you already have it in mind, but there are so many different packages, premium and different tools, and there's even like for people in sales, there's as for business development. I mean, I know some people who have truly devoted lots and lots of time to optimizing this for the purpose of generating leads and qualified leads.
Yeah.
And it's actually a pretty darn success. He's doing really well by using it for those purposes. Now, I don't know, do you have like training on that?
Yeah, great question. So LinkedIn, its kind of core purpose is to help you advance your career, which is why we do these things like the feed or groups that help you meet other people who are, you can network with. We help you get the content that you need to read. We help you get an identity out there. But there are some professions that certainly use LinkedIn for other purposes, and we certainly encourage it. So the most notable one is recruiters. We have a recruiter product that we sell, which is a dedicated workflow tool to hiring managers and recruiters to help them hire. We have a sales navigator, which is dedicated to salespeople to help them understand how to get leads. We have a learning product, which is dedicated to companies who want to train their employees on how to learn, which is my new product, which is the ability to get people the right content to their end users. And then we have a premium product, which is typically aimed for job seekers. We have many premium SKUs, but the idea if you're a job seeker, you need a few more things. You need the ability to typically understand if you have what's happening in this job. You want the ability to reach out to people outside your network, which is a paid product because we let everyone do it. It would get quite noisy. you need the ability to look sometimes at who viewed my profile, right? Because it's kind of a way you want to manage your identity. And so, and you know, it's business as well. And so some of those we feel like is the right place to kind of put in the paywall. And then finally, we have an advertising product. So if you're an advertiser, you're trying to grow your small business or whatever it is, we can actually put ads in the feed and certainly drive traffic to you. So, you know, I recognize that one of the things that, you know, most people wear many hats, right? Some people are job seekers and ironically recruiters, or they have a small business and they're selling. And so we recognize that a lot of the people who are members, who are using the product to keep their community, often are also paying customers or users as well. And so if you're interested in those, there's of course web collateral. A lot of them are sell through enterprise, or there's kind of a self-serve kind of item. But I'm more than happy to help and hope that answers. Yeah. Great. Those are my 5 tips that I kind of want to work through today. So, you know, it's get your profile picture in order. Make sure that you have some text under your past and present positions. Add your images in where possible. Take the time to author some content and really be seen as an expert, and then pick your top 5 skills and make sure they're on your profile. Yeah, go ahead.
So LinkedIn is really good for professionals, right?
Yeah.
Professionals in technology, professionals in marketing, professionals, if I could say white collar workers. But if I had to pick my landscape designer or my contractor or my house, I'd probably not go to LinkedIn, I'd go to Yelp or some other source. So what's LinkedIn's strategy? There is such a big gap in, and I would say a good opportunity for LinkedIn to tap into those resources and try to figure out how, you know, because it's all the same. You can publicize your skills, you can give your experience and all of that.
Yeah.
In other work of
course. Yeah, so you're right. When LinkedIn originally started, and it's, you know, our original tab was professional work, and that was kind of who the product. We had to pick a user, right, and that's who the product and the features were designed around. Over time, we've actually made a lot more. You know, I think one is work is kind of I'd say in some ways the segmentations are starting to fall apart, as you kind of are calling out. A lot of people are going in and out of things and do 2 things at once. And I think over time we've just become a little bit more global, and so now we're starting to serve more and more people, and they're able to tell their story in particular ways. And that's not just kind of the traditional professional versus blue collar, you know, segmentation. I think we're getting better at small businesses, we're getting better at international and all those items. And so, yeah, I think some of these value props are universal. Like, I think the ability to want better opportunity, the ability to want to get good content, the ability to have an identity, these are getting more and more universal. And, you know, a lot of the things we're trying to look for, you're right, like, we have a product called ProFinder now, which is the ability to hire particular service providers. We're starting more with designers and accountants, but, you know, there are people who basically run their own businesses and want to get service. We are increasingly starting to standardize other kinds of titles, so those searches exist as well. And, you know, as you know, companies hire all kinds of people, and so increasingly we're hoping to become a place where they come hire those, all kinds of folks on our site as well.
Yeah. Question from the live stream. One of our participants is asking, do the LinkedIn algorithms take the number of connections that somebody has in account when displaying the results for like a people search? So if I've got 7,000 connections, somebody else has 700, would it treat me differently in searching for a new name?
So, you know, these machine learning algorithms take in a lot of signals, and sometimes I'm not sure which ones they take in, so I don't want to speak that definitively. I believe most of our searches, this is my opinion, don't hold me to fact here, are typically done around your network. And so if you type in a name, like if you type in the name Mike, there are probably tens of millions of Mike in the world, but 1 or 2 of them are probably close to your network, and those are the ones we're going to put up first, so kind of first, second, third group. And then you can kind of go in and filter your searches. So I don't think that's probably the item that we've indexed most heavily. To the degree though, like the only thing I can think about is, you know, we obviously want to make sure that it is a valid profile, it's not a spam profile, and having real connections is a good signal there. We might be doing it kind of secondarily for sure.
Thanks.
That's a good question.
So you're saying degrees of distance from your own profile would probably be more heavily weighted? In search, right? So like LinkedIn, it's a network, right? So everything's kind of done around the people, your community around you.
And so yeah, if you type in a name, we want to make sure like our job on search is to give you what we call a successful search. And so we assume you're kind of looking for someone in your network. Yeah.
Okay. And I have a question with the certification section.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it's worth adding certifications that are not really related with your profession or what you're looking for, or if it's actually worth it. Like, should we disregard those, or should we still add them?
I would add them. So like, it's like, look, there's all kinds of theories on like, what the right way to tell your story is. My theory is it's very hard. I constantly am surprised at like the threads that come together to give people opportunity. Like I'm constantly surprised at like someone, who didn't realize two things fit together until they fit together. And so like, and I hear these stories all the time, like I'm talking to people like, oh, I've always like, I was a volunteer fireman and I did X and I never knew that like there was a job that required some of the skill sets here, right? And so I would go ahead and add them, especially in subsection like certifications, which typically are not, like when you glance at the profile, they're typically looking first at experiences and then looking at certifications. I would probably say it's going to help your story. That's my thought.
I would just offer on that, I think it also is field specific. And so some fields have more certifications, like engineering or programming, and other fields don't, like, or the certifications being less, like executive coaching, administrating. And so I think different fields will look at that differently as we consider what to add.
Yeah.
Another live stream question. Is there a way that LinkedIn can help candidates looking to change their field of work, as most of the time the connections that we have are from the same field we're already in?
Great question. So we launched a product about a year ago now. It was called the Career Advice product. And if you go into your profile, there's a little toggle that says Career Advice. You can turn it on and you can get advice from other people. And the first thing that happens when you turn on that toggle is that it'll tell you what are you looking for advice for. And you can pick someone outside of your field. And so you can say, for an example, if you're in marketing and you want to make sales, you can say, I'm actually looking for advice in sales, and then you will get introduced to people in sales as kind of people you should meet, who have actually, typically have X amount of years of experience and some history on the platform, so we kind of know them a little bit. And then two, have opted in and said, I want to actually help out. And so it's actually, it's a product I'm really close to, I was very excited about, and so I encourage you to check it out.
Where does that feature live?
It lives, are you on the app?
Yeah.
It lives on the profile. And so if you go to the profile, there's a little section called My Dashboard, and you'll see it on the top. Yeah.
More of a comment than
Yeah.
a question, but I love the career advice
Great.
product. I used it to connect with other people who are within my field at much more senior levels than I.
Yeah.
And since activating that feature, I've got a lot of great feedback from them that have helped me really leverage my career.
Music to my ears. Thank you. That's great. We've heard some good things about it. I think we have to, product discoveries. We got to do a few things, but I'm feeling pretty good about where it is right now. Yeah.
So what has changed after the Microsoft acquisition? Like, what is going to change?
I mean, I don't think operating-wise, who knows what's going to change in the future. Operating-wise, not much. Like, we still run a pretty independent company. I think I wouldn't say much. I think, I'd say, there's a couple of integrations we did with Microsoft on the Sales Navigator side. There's one we did on Windows, and it's given us some more services. It's been pretty, not a company strategy thing, but just internally, it's been pretty remarkable watching that turnaround. It's probably one of the best corporate turnarounds in possibly in history, been going now for a while. So it's been a really interesting example, and I've enjoyed that personally. But other than that, like I think it's our mission hasn't changed, our CEO hasn't changed, product strategy hasn't changed, features haven't changed. Everything's pretty much the way it was. Yeah.
That's why they bought it.
I hope. Yeah. Hopefully that's true. So yeah. Yeah.
Harry, I've used LinkedIn a lot. LinkedIn has come to Manila. I'm based in Manila.
Yeah.
And won several awards through LinkedIn.
Great.
Whenever they come from Singapore, for a breakfast meeting. I'm just part of the team that made LinkedIn app more solid than before.
Yep.
So we contribute ideas on how to make
That's
it,
great.
which is really doing good.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I'm curious now. That's something that I'm starting to use, which is the hashtag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like now, what I did, I took a photo of you,
Good.
with the name,
Yeah.
posted on LinkedIn, and captured your name on it. So I'm guaranteed that I have higher analytics with just without you in it, and with your name on it.
I don't know if my name is going to take you anywhere, but yeah.
300% higher
Yeah.
views. But there's a hashtag that LinkedIn for they make a strong forward a campaign, because it always appears for suggested hashtags.
Yep.
Does it really work on LinkedIn?
So are you saying are hashtags effective?
Yeah.
So hashtags is fairly new for us.
Does Google crawl on it?
I don't think Google crawls. So that's a great question. I don't know. I should know that, but I actually don't. They're fairly new for us. I think the reason we did this is increasingly we're starting to realize that people want to communicate to communities. And communities are both the people they know as well as the things they all share in common. And so when you post an article or you're talking about something and you can hashtag, I don't know, wine, or whatever the topic is that's on your mind, you can create a new kind of community around it. And so increasingly we're seeing people starting to discover things through you can search for hashtags, you can start discovering things through hashtags. We're letting groups kind of flow through there as well. And so that was the premise of it was more around, hey, how do we help people make sure they have the communities around them that can help them out? And so I think so I can tell you as a user, I don't have the data on this, but like I've enjoyed it. Like I think it's actually, to your point, made the experience a little bit more manageable. It helps people direct their comments to the right community. And I think the UX the team did in order to launch is spot on. So it's a cool system. Yeah. Good question. Thanks.
Do you find any difference in the headlines that you display? Should you display your current job and company, or something more general like seasoned executive or people person?
First of all, the headline is the field right under your name, and if you don't do anything, it just defaults to your current position. And if you can come in and add something else there as well. I think that what I always tell people is your current position is probably the right thing to do there, unless there's part of the story you want to tell that's beyond that. And so if you're a job seeker, if you're a student, if you're starting something, sometimes I see people hacking in and saying I'm hiring. I think there's some things you could do, but I would have a specific reason for doing that unless I have a specific reason for changing that.
I've noticed as I've been looking at people's profiles that that's often something people forget to update, and so they may go in and change their, and it's the first thing I see.
Yeah.
It's like, if I looked at Michael's and it said, UCSF, hasn't been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Gotta
change your headline.
And
that's actually a good
call. The other day I was suggesting somebody for a job. They asked me to introduce them for something, and I wrote them back and I said, I'll be happy to do so if you update your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And or students will still say, MBA candidate, or MS candidate, well, you graduated.
Yeah. And so they change the position, but they don't change the headline?
Yeah, because they did a tailored headline.
Yeah. I see. I see. And it didn't update.
Student at top school seeking job, and then they get a job, but they need to go in and redo their headline.
Yeah, that's probably part of the product thing too. We probably should put that.
Oh, I think it's user interface.
That's probably
just dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
There's something to follow up on it. Like the newest trend on how to go like the headline. Before it used to be that way, but I've noticed the best way to do is combine aspects of the way you describe yourself.
Yep.
Like for myself, I do entrepreneur, connector, humanist, traveler. So this is just how I do it. I know most people would do it on this, and more people would just relate to it.
Yeah.
Rather than the very tight.
If you're
CEO level that you've
I think that's right. I think if you have a story you're trying to tell or like a real position, I think changing is totally fine. What I've seen sometimes that confuses people is they will tweak it almost, or they'll be small, and I feel like sometimes you don't have to is all I'm saying. Like I think it's a good call out. Sorry, did you have a question?
I did. I was wondering about how you're addressing gig economy, freelance
Yeah.
economy, where it might be same title at multiple places
Yeah.
or varying points in time.
Yeah.
And I've never found the interface up until now elegant for this. It's always quite awkward or very. I get, how do I enter this stuff?
Yeah, so we have multiple people who have multiple positions, and you can list them and actually regroup them the way you want. So for instance, I advise a couple companies, and I basically have my position, and I group the other ones underneath, even though they started later. So, it's a pretty common thing now that you'll see like so-and-so and they have like 3 or 4 positions. We thought about should we combine them into, different segments, but the reality is the way the trends are going is people work on very varied things and it's hard to sometimes group things together. So that's kind of what I'd suggest. In addition to that, like I mentioned, we actually have a product Profinder now, which is a product that actually tries to help you get these on LinkedIn. So I check that out. Yeah?
Another person on the live stream says, are there any, given that recruiters are now looking for specific tags, are there any hot tags which can be used in the profile to increase visibility?
Got it. Sorry, was that your question? Ashish, was that your question?
Oh, no, I was just saying hi to someone on the camera.
Oh, sorry. That's awesome. Are there tags you should be adding to your profile? So,
particularly hot tags.
So the tags are more, yeah, great question. The tags are more for feed updates. So basically, if there's an update coming up from the feed, that's basically, thanks guys. If there's something you're posting on the feed, like the gentleman was saying, that's where we actually have been tagging new content coming through. The tags aren't really for profiles.
Yeah. Okay.
So I want to be respectful of time and thank you for your presentation and all these great Q&A opportunities. So, do you have a sense globally, internationally, which country has the highest proportion of its population on LinkedIn?
We certainly have that data. I don't know it offhand,
yeah.
But pretty much, we see the engagement rates in Europe, we see the engagement rates here in Asia. I mean, LinkedIn is certainly. I spent a lot more time traveling globally than I did a couple of years ago, and so we're certainly moving in the right direction there.
And would you guess the U.S. is still is
the U.S.
This is where it started.
Yeah, it's sort of. I mean, the U.S. I mean, professionally, it's it's hard to. I say anecdotally, it's hard to find people nowadays who haven't heard of it or haven't at least tried it. I think the growth rates in some of the new developing economies are certainly coming on too. Increasingly, we look at it kind of engagement rates as well. Basically, how much are people using the platform? It's going in the right direction.
Great.
Yeah.
So the last question from the live stream is clearly from one of our students. Are you hiring, and can we send you resumes?
We are. LinkedIn is always hiring. The best thing to do, and it's a great question, and I always appreciate it, is go to a job that you're interested in, and then you can either apply. I mean, LinkedIn takes that stuff seriously, so you can apply on that job. Or if there's a referral button, you can ask for a referral for someone you know who might be associated with LinkedIn. And that's usually what I'd suggest. Like, look, LinkedIn is done on a premise that people get opportunities through people who know you, they can vouch for you. And so the more we can basically get those things going, the better. All right, guys. I want to thank you guys for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you, Hari. Appreciate your time, and thank you for all joining us. We can now have some more fun. Carry on our conversation.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Pretty good. Oh, and this is a gift as a small token.
This is very nice. Thank you. So thanks so much.
Appreciate it. No, it's great. And thanks again. That was good information. And boy,
Melissa, do you want me to show you that function?
Yes.
It's wickedly easy.